Hey gamers, it's Wintermute here from Grind This Game, back with the Oxygen Not Included tutorial guide series. And this is part 7 in the series, and last episode we set up exosuits. And as you kind of go along, if you're into the kind of the 100 cycle, 200 cycle part of the game, like after some time, you may start to run out of algae. There is lots of big pockets of algae on the map, but depending on how many dupes you have and how many deoxidizers you're running and how big your base is, you may start to run out of algae. So you want to keep exploring before you run out of algae. So I generally just explore kind of in all 4 directions. Once you get exosuits, it's a lot easier to explore through the slime. And in the last episode, I kind of showed how you can do that. And you want to keep exploring until you find one of these cool steam vents. It might not be a cool steam vent, it might be a hot steam vent, but you'll these things produce water for you. So they produce steam, and then the steam cools down. If you can check your temperature overlay, they run pretty hot. So it produces steam at 110 degrees, and it's producing about 3 kilograms of water per second. And it's not always erupting, but it is erupting most of the time. So once you've found one of these, you can use the water in it to produce oxygen using the electrolyzer. So under this oxygen in the bottom left, there's a piece of kit called the electrolyzer. And you have to research this. Under research, let's just see where it lives. Right down here, just under plumbing and then air systems. So once you get that, let's take a look at it here. It takes water, 1,000 grams per second, 120 watts of power, and it outputs oxygen and hydrogen. But the output of oxygen and hydrogen is at a fixed temperature of 70 degrees. So if you pump this water from here, it's really hot water at 62 degrees, and it might be hotter as time goes by. It might get up to 100 degrees. If you pump that hot water into your base and set the electrolyzers up in your base, you'd have 70 degree oxygen and 70 degree hydrogen, which would not be great. You could put a bunch of wheezeworts if you were able to find a bunch of wheezeworts throughout your base to kind of cool down that oxygen, but I prefer to do it a different way, and that is to take the hot water and to pump it over. Once I've found an ice biome or two, you'll find some of these anti-entropy thermo-nullifiers. Now this isn't a requirement of the build, but these are really good at cooling, so I like to use them. You could also use a sealed insulated room with wheezeworts, 3 or 4 of them, and that might be sufficient. But I'm going to use this. Now my water is very far away from these things, and depending on your map generation, you might luck out and have water closer to these. And actually there is this cool steam vent here that I found after the fact, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to pretend it's not here. I'm going to pretend that these are really far apart from each other. So we'll go way over here, and I'll kind of take you through the build and how it works. Now I am using kind of insta-build mode just to make the tutorial a little bit faster. It's still everything that the dupes could do. Now you may want to put a tile here to kind of push the water over. And I usually build my pump at the lowest point. You could kind of straighten out the room and make it a bit more squared, but I'm just going to build it like this. Now under plumbing, you want to use your liquid pump, and you need to make this out of gold amalgam. If you make it out of copper, it will melt. And this water is really hot, so you want to use gold amalgam. We're going to need power for that. I'm just going to lead a line out this way. And I'll probably use just coal power for now. If you have a main power grid, you could use that instead. But I'm just going to quickly set up some power here with some automation. Connect these two. Set the smart battery to 50% or around there. Set the coal generator to a high priority so they come and deliver some coal. Now for this room, you probably want to use an airlock just so the steam doesn't get out. So I will use just a regular old airlock right there. And seal it up so no water gets out. Actually, I should probably build it a bit higher. Just so all this water doesn't get out like it just did. Now I'm going to insta-mop it just because it's a bit of a mess. So I would probably do something like this and then an airlock. Like so. Mop up that hot water just so it's out of the way. Now we also need to have a water line. So under plumbing, liquid pipe. Now you can use insulated pipes, but I'm just going to use a regular liquid pipe. It's always worked for me, but I'm going to build it out of abyssalite. Now you should have tons of abyssalite on your map, so it shouldn't be an issue. And I'm just going to lead a pipe along here, outside, and I'm going to lead it all the way over to where that thermo-nullifier is. Now it would take a while for your dupes to build this out, but it's not impossible. It just takes some time. Might take a few cycles. I'm just going to build around the dirt here. It's a little bit messy. I would make it prettier in a real build out. And we're going all the way over here. It seems crazy, but we're taking it over just to here, to this nullifier. So the reason I use abyssalite is that the hot water, we don't want the heat from all this hot water leaking out. If it was made out of granite or something, all the heat from the hot water would escape into the environment and heat up this area even more. Now in some areas of the map that might be fine, like this area right here, it might be fine for the heat to bleed out because your dupes, it's not part of your base. But if it's getting close to your base, like along here, you might not want that heat to leak out, and you might want to make this abyssalite. I just make all my pipes out of abyssalite. That way the temperature that's in it stays in it. So we got that, we got the pump. It needs power, so once they deliver, let's speed things up. Once they deliver some coal here, we'll get some power. And the pump should start running once we, let's get back over here. Back into our cold room. So now we have a water set up, and what I like to do here is I usually build a metal wall here that conducts temperature really well. But because I want access to over here, I'm just going to use a manual airlock out of wolframite. It doesn't need to be wolframite, but it's a good conductor, so we'll just do that. And I'm going to use metal tile right here and here. The metal type doesn't matter, and you can refine. You can get that pure metal using the rock crusher, rock granulator, where I think I have one in my base somewhere. I don't anymore. I think I took it away. But that's under utilities. No, it's not. It's under refinement, rock granulator. So you can refine basic copper into pure copper there. And then you can make metal tiles. So that's going to conduct the cold from this thing kind of over to this section here. You can also build temp shift plates out of diamond's the best, but you can also use simpler materials. You can even use granite. And that just like evens the temperature out. So you could build something like that to kind of move the cold, even the heat out between this and this. So then the parts that are important. You need, under oxygen, you need an electrolyzer. So I'm going to build that right here. And it needs water. So we'll bring the water line over, but I won't hook it up just... we can hook it up now. That's fine. So it also needs power, but I'm first going to build under ventilation. I'm going to use a gas pump. Now it's probably okay to build this out of copper because it's a cold area, but I'll use gold just in case. And you want 2 gas pumps for every electrolyzer. Because the electrolyzer is giving off almost 1,000 grams per second, and these pumps can only do 500 per second each. So this will ensure that it you get like full throughput. Now we also want a gas pipe, and I like to use abyssalite here too because the oxygen that's in these pipes will stay cold. So we'll do something like this. We'll go around here, join up with this one, but then we want to filter out hydrogen because This thing's going to be giving off oxygen and hydrogen. So under ventilation, we're going to do a gas filter. Copper's fine, but I'm going to use gold. And you're going to have an input line. The white is the input line. So the pipe is going to go into the input line. And the yellow is the filtered output, which you'll select on the actual filter. And we're going to set that to hydrogen in a second here. Send that down that way. And then everything else we're going to send out. Now that could contain chlorine and carbon dioxide and whatever else is in this room right now. But eventually it'll just be, the room will clear out and it'll just be oxygen or hydrogen. So we're going to have a line here, and I'm going to use a bridge out of abyssalite. White is the in and green is the out. And we'll send this abyssalite oxygen line off to the base. Now this is also going to be a long line, but like I said, there's a lot of abyssalite on the map. So it's okay. Actually, make sure I'm not going too far here. Find where the base is. So we're going down to here. Just keep that line going. Not like that. Down this way and into the base. Now let me see how I'm going to do this. I'll probably just cross over. And for now, I will just dump the oxygen here. But you probably want to spider out, like do a few branches and put a few vents throughout your base. But for now, I'll just put one vent right here. And we need a bridge that's abyssalite out of right here. Cross over. Oops. Get back to building that pipe there. So that should be good. Now we have to get rid of the hydrogen. Let's just do that. So the hydrogen line, let's select our output first. If you click the filter, you have a list here, and we're going to click hydrogen as the output, the filtered output. And we're going to send that to a hydrogen generator. So under power, hydrogen generator. Like I'm going to use it gold again, but actually copper's fine. We'll stick that right here. And we'll send that hydrogen off to the hydrogen generator. Right down here. And I'm going to branch off, and I'm going to send some hydrogen off to this area. I'm actually going to hook it up into this thermo-nullifier. It requires, let's just see here. I think it's 10 grams per second of hydrogen. It usually says right here, yeah, 10 grams per second of hydrogen. So some hydrogen is going to go here. Some's going to go to the generator to kind of burn off the excess. And any power we generate here will feed back into the system. And you may want to seal this room here as well, because hydrogen is a really good gas for keeping things cool. So I'll just do a quick... This is not necessary, but it will help cool things down. You can use iron or whatever here. We'll do that. And we can have a regular tile out of abyssalite's fine, just to... Doesn't need to be abyssalite, but granite's fine. So we'll fill this room with hydrogen as well. So we'll use a gas pipe, and we'll branch off here, and we'll just put a vent right there. So that little room will fill with hydrogen. Hydrogen will go into the nullifier, and then hydrogen excess will go to the generator. And we need to hook all this up with power. And you should be okay with 1 kilowatt wire for all of this, because it's 240 plus 240 plus 120, 120. It should be fine. So we'll just connect this all up with a 1 kilowatt wire. Bring that down, hook it up into this. But I'm also going to build a coal generator here, just to kickstart the thing. So coal generator, smart battery, and hook up this power, like that, and then automation, like this. Set this to 50%. And set this to a higher priority, the coal generator, just so the dupes come around and fill it. that should give this whole system power and kind of kick things off. Now, I shouldn't let them actually start this all up yet, because once this starts, the hydrogen will start bubbling out and it'll kind of fill up here. So you probably want to seal off this area as well. So I will do an airlock right here. With the granite tiles, fine, just right here. So this room is somewhat sealed. Now you could use a water lock just to ensure that nothing else gets out, but I'm okay with this because the hydrogen floats to the top and the oxygen kind of comes down. So it should be fine. If a little bit of hydrogen makes its way out and kind of gets stuck, it'll just float to the top up here and we could deal with it later on. So let's just see if everything's flowing. So the hydrogen's going to 3 places. The hydrogen generator, this anti-entropy thermo-nullifier, and also into the vent. Now you could put gas valves to concentrate the hydrogen going to this thing, but this is just for extra cooling. It doesn't really need to be running kind of 24/7. So we got oxygen coming out, heading off to the base, and it's nice and cold. That's the beauty of this system, is you get nice cold oxygen. Even though you're sending in really hot water, and the really hot water turns into 70°. It's hard to see, but the oxygen that's coming off here is 70 degrees. But it instantly gets cooled by all this, and it stays cool forever, or for thousands and thousands of cycles. Now you could, if you needed more oxygen for a really big base, you could just duplicate this whole set right here and put another one right beside it. But you'll need a separate oxygen line because these pipes are saturated. You would fill up the pipe and it couldn't handle it. So you'd need a second oxygen pipe to go off into your base. Now we're getting little bits of chlorine, and that's fine because that chlorine will get used up. Or not used up, but it'll get sucked out of this room. So now that we got nice cool oxygen going to the base, we can turn off this algae deoxidizer. I'll just disable it. Now you might want to leave them in your base just in case for emergencies if something goes wrong. You could also hook up some automation and just do something like use a Atmos sensor right beside it. Do something like this. Say if the pressure is below 400 grams, for instance, turn on, otherwise stay off. And that way if there's an emergency, and let's say the water got all used up from over here, which is entirely possible. Let's say all the water got used up here, and you were off digging somewhere else and you were a little bit worried that the oxygen would stop in your electrolyzer setup. This way, these will kick back on if this main system stops making oxygen. So right now it's backed up. I could probably turn this off because I don't really need it anymore. Now this is nice cold oxygen, which is nice for growing certain plants. Now it might get too cold, which is actually a good problem to have. It's pretty easy to warm things up in this game, but it's a lot harder to cool them down. So if you find your base is getting too cool, part of this line along here, you could use, under ventilation, you could use a radiant gas pipe and kind of snake it through a hot room that you want to cool down. Or you could have, under utilities, you could build a space heater or a couple of them in a hot room and or you could put just space heaters right in your base. But generally I think the base, depending on how you insulate it, it'll stay at a nice temperature if you do it this way. Let's just see, the oxygen's at 6 degrees. Because everything around it is warm, it should work out pretty nicely. But like I said, easier to warm things up than cool them down. So I think that kind of covers the setup. And now this thing should just run forever. I love this setup because I never have to, once I set it up, I never have to go back and deal with it again. Depending on your cool steam vent, like I said, this thing's doing it at about 3,000 grams per second. And the electrolyzer is eating about 1,000 grams per second. So depending on the eruption period, this will stay fine. Now this thing does get hot, so you may want to insulate. If this was really close to your base, you might want to insulate part of it to prevent all the heat dumping in your base. But because it's way over here on the other side of the map, it's not really a big deal. I might want to put some Weezeworts right beside the coal generator, just to keep it cool, but it should be fine. So, that should be it. If you can't find the nullifier, like I said, you can use a small insulated room with 3 or 4 Weezeworts in it. Like over here. Where was I? Over here. I could have a small insulated room right here where I snake radiant pipe under ventilation, this radiant gas pipe, and put maybe 5 Weezeworts in an insulated room, snake that pipe through, and that way, you know, the oxygen's going to get cooled that way instead of being cooled from this thing. Just another way to do it. Now you might need more than 5 Weezeworts to keep it cool enough, but there are so many Weezeworts on the map that it shouldn't be an issue. Or you can let it just cool down a little bit here and then put Weezeworts in your base. It's kind of up to you. Now, there's another YouTuber out there, Cryptic Fox, who did a tutorial video on the electrolyzer. Now, he has a really cool setup where he takes advantage of some of the properties of gas, where each tile of gas can only take one type of gas, and he kind of uses that to his advantage to build a room that doesn't require a filter. If we go back up here, this filter is actually using power, and you know, I'm not too concerned about it because I always find I have too much power. But if you want to have a system that doesn't use any power, you can use his, just Google Cryptic Fox electrolyzer setup and you'll find his video. It's pretty good. That way you won't need a filter, and it can kind of run on its own power just with the hydrogen that it uses. Now it doesn't produce as much throughput. It doesn't saturate a line. It doesn't generate just as much oxygen as this. So this is why I prefer this, but if you want a really cool setup, check his out. Now you could also use a mechanical gas filter, which is just Google mechanical gas filter, oxygen not included, and you'll see people who have set them up. It's a cool way to set up a gas filter that doesn't require any power as well. I never use them just because I'm too lazy to set them up, but they're a cool thing. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap this video up. I want to keep it pretty short. I'd love to hear your comments, your feedback on this setup and improvements. There's a whole bunch of designs for electrolyzer setups in this game out there, and it kind of changes as time goes by. But hope you enjoyed that. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.